What is Jeremy Rubin working on? Jeremy is one of the most innovative and insightful Bitcoin developers, and whenever he comes up with an idea, Bitcoin devs love to talk about it. I believe for the first time, Jeremy explains what he's working on this podcast. So stay tuned. This is a technical discussion, but if you hang on, we will touch on things like working from home, building a Bitcoin company, and how Jeremy might reimagine certain parts of Bitcoin from the top down. Bitcoin Season 2 is brought to you by Arch Network, the platform building bridgeless apps on Bitcoin. More on Arch later on the show. Let's kick it off. This conversation was recorded live at the Inscribing Conference at Bitcoin Vegas, a Bitcoin culture and arts conference. Shout out Inscribing. Go to inscribing.com or at Ord Events on X. Okay, so welcome to Bitcoin Season 2, Jeremy. You wanted to come on here to talk about changing from sats to bits, right? That's what you...
Yeah, absolutely. As the original No 176er, go home. No one wants this. Like find a new hobby. There's gardening, there's tennis, there's skateboarding. There's also a brick wall you can beat your head against. That's what I have to say about changing the base unit of Bitcoin away from sats, which is something that's like universally understood by every user of Bitcoin for the last a decade plus. So there you go. There's your spicy quotes.
You're familiar with beating your head against a brick wall a lot, but let's table that for now. Let's talk about something not as related directly to Bitcoin. You're in Miami and you have an office of some top secret project I'll try to lure information out from you about, but I want to get your thoughts on, you've been tweeting a bit about working in person lately, and you have opinions about how it's much more effective as a developer-focused guy and team working in person. Is this the great reversal from the COVID remote diaspora? We're coming back to working in person.
I think that there are times and places where remote work can really be good. And I think, we have some folks who work with us who are remote and we make that work. But there's nothing that compares to sitting and like just talking about something with someone. When you're doing an online meeting, after like 45 minutes, you really don't want to be on that screen anymore. But if you're in person, you could end up talking for a couple hours and just, whiteboarding and chatting about stuff. You build a lot of camaraderie day to day. And so I think early stage, trying to be remote, it just does not make sense. And so for the most part, we're trying to have everyone co-located and make it a space that encourages everyone to, feel cohesion and work together. And I think it's going well so far.
You've got an actual office space now.
We do.
For what exactly? What are you guys doing down in Miami? What are you building?
Working. So I think that's the other thing is earlier on we didn't have a dedicated office, so we'd kind of go to one person or the other's like house or apartment or something. And that worked for a while, but it was clear we wanted that wouldn't work if we were like bringing someone in to interview and see, hey, do you want to work with us? And by the way, this is the couch, that is in my living room, so you can sit there. That didn't quite work. So getting an office is like a big improvement in terms of having a dedicated space, having the, like all the furnishings and stuff. It's not, it's one more thing to do that's not really directly related to your mission, but one thing that another Miamian, Keith, will say is that you're building a cult and you have to have a church, so you got to have a location that people can go. And, I think the recommendation there is also not to get a co-working space, but to get a dedicated office where you can build a team culture. So I think that's been really nice. Now, to answer your actual question, is like, what the hell are we getting up to? So we have two products right now that we're building. One is called Polybeam. We just launched today.
As you can see from the t-shirt, dope ass t-shirt, very logo. Cool, thin Miami vibes. It's a bridge.
It's a bridge. As you can see, actually the logo is I designed it, and it is based a little bit off of the Boston Bridge. I don't know if you've noticed the architectural design.
I don't really know Boston Bridge. Okay. I've been to Boston twice, but is that significant?
It's just kind of a fun fact.
Okay.
I mean, I went to school in Boston, so. Anyways, that's one product. It's live. The really exciting thing that we're doing is so it's Bitcoin runes to StarkNet, but it's also StarkNet back. And so one thing that we have is a like runes that represent like USDC, for example. So you can have like stable assets on Bitcoin, which is I think pretty meaningful.
And Bitcoin Season 2 is a signer on this federated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So happy to be a part of this. And then maybe a little more enigmatic. You don't have to answer this, but I will invite you to, if you wish, say something about Char. You gave me a seed phrase this time last year, and I plugged it in and took me to some Noster front end or something, and I still have no idea what it does.
Yeah, the Char pills. I will do something with them at some point. They're mostly just for fun. I didn't want to be empty-handed, and so everyone who was friendly got a Char pill. There'll be something. So hang on to it.
I thought it was just because my name was Charlie.
Oh yeah, no. Otherwise, I would have had to rename a bunch of other people, and they wouldn't have taken too kindly to that. So for Char, what we're up to is we're building a Bitcoin staking platform. And we're building it directly into like the Bitcoin client. Architecturally, there are a lot of strong reasons to do that. I think we've seen a big growth in the like roll-up space recently, and they all have a consensus orchestration problem. The existing providers who have been doing some stuff with Bitcoin staking, I think that their solutions are not really adequate, and they're not going to meet the actual demand or product requirements. So we're doing a very good job at building that out. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's not a throw it at the wall situation. We're doing careful engineering work, but we're really happy with how it's going, and keeping a little bit skunk works for now, because I don't think I want to put out something and be like, try our demo and nothing works. We're making a very careful job with this, and it'll be out soon. We'll start showing some cool stuff soon.
Yeah, and this podcast probably goes out in a month, so a lot can happen in that time. But so you mentioned you were building the staking. What was the term you used? Directly into the client, or into the Bitcoin client that you're running?
Yeah.
What does that mean? So
architecturally, if you're building a like staking platform for the Bitcoin ecosystem, Bitcoin is a very high performance piece of software, and the demands for like a staking program are even greater in some senses, if it's going to work at scale. And so if we built it as like a Python script or a Go program that's running, calling the Bitcoin RPCs, polling, you're adding a lot of latency and also a lot of complexity, and the utilities to keep it synchronized with your Bitcoin node. It's actually pretty difficult, but we run in lockstep with like Bitcoin validation. So it's able to be more tightly coupled with Bitcoin, which is something that all of the roll-ups or side chains, whoever might use a sequencing layer, require. So that's part of why we're building it that way. It does take a lot more effort because we have to build in, like really baked into Bitcoin. But
did you have to kind of deconstruct the core client? Or I remember you this time last year, you asked me to ask you about Bitcoin Pure.
Oh yeah,
is this kind of a spiritual successor of that, or some kind of?
I think for the for the nerds out there, basically we're just like building a set of like statically linked libraries that can get linked into core. So it's just a linkable module. Because it's still in prototyping phase, we're not like going through the rigmarole of making it so that you can like disable it at build time. But maybe at some point we'll make it so it's disableable at build time. It's not like really changing how the Bitcoin client actually works. It's just that we wanted to hook into all the signals, for example, the C validation interface that you're able to get inside of Bitcoin, so we can build all of our indexes really performantly. I think if I end up having like a hackathon I participate in, like I'll also build like let's say like a runes or ordinals tracker in this way as well. Because, right now it's a separate piece of software you have to run. It could also be built as an index inside of Bitcoin, and just no one's made the effort.
It'd basically be you, for the layperson, maybe you saying, okay, that ordinals bit Casey submitted, we're just going to bake it into the client.
Yeah. And it doesn't really change how Bitcoin works, but it would be nice if when you run a Bitcoin node, you also can get, like a tracking of like ordinals, for example. And at this point, there's a lot of APIs that are nice to have that you do want to have. baked into the ORD, stuff, but it would also be fine for it to be like a C++ code base.
You said kind of a bit of a non sequitur transition. You mentioned working in person. You get to whiteboard stuff. Here's a random question. You don't have to answer this. I remember at our conference Up Next, I stumbled upon you and a couple other guys whiteboarding something. And also you suggested that we have whiteboards. So we did. And I was very excited to see a bunch of people coming up with all sorts of harebrained schemes. Did you come up with any harebrained schemes at Up Next? And maybe what were you whiteboarding?
Let's see. So I was whiteboarding multiple times. So, it would have to be a question of when, but I can give you a couple of them. I think I'll just also remark that get a whiteboard if you don't have one. I'm sponsored by Expo. No, I'm kidding.
Bro, I would love to get that Expo sponsorship.
Yeah, Expo if you're out there, or Viz Pro. That's the any of you guys hit me up. I'll chill. Yeah, Sharpie. Sharpie's forever. Yeah. Whiteboard is just for today.
Yeah.
But
it's a long sponsorship.
Keyboards are good. It's really hard to get into a deep flow with a keyboard, I find. And I am really a manual, work with my hands kind of person. So I think something about just being able to scribble and write and draw, cross out, really just gets a more creative, juices flowing. So I recommend, some sort of real writing. And then when you're working with other people, a piece of paper is too small. So a whiteboard's really nice. And we have these big glass walls, so you can even write on the glass walls, which is cool.
Again, that's a clear board. So not
a clear board. Yeah. But anyways,
harebrained schemes. So one of them was kind of an alternative to the great consensus cleanup.
Now I've looked at the great consensus cleanup, and I'm also pretty intimately familiar with the motivations for wanting nodes to not fall over when you craft malicious blocks and transactions. I've worked on that stuff. I know that it has to get fixed. But I think that it's actually a much bigger change than people appreciate, because for the most part, when we do soft forks and we talk about upgrades, we're talking about new functionality done in a place of the protocol that's been clearly demarcated of don't use this stuff. And the way that the consensus cleanup is sort of set up is a little bit more, hey, we're going to break some stuff that we probably maybe never should have had in the first place. And I am a lot more red flag on that. One example being there's a fix for 64-byte transactions to make them permanently invalid. I really don't like that, because I think that you actually might want 64-byte transactions. You might go well, why? It's well, I don't know. Let's say that we're a couple years in the future and we come up with some really cool new SegWit thing, and then there's wait a minute, there's stuff happening that's not in that 64 bytes, because it's not 64-byte transactions that are banned, it's 64-byte witness stripped transactions. So it's actually a slightly different thing. And so you can't have 64-byte witness stripped transactions. So what if the witness was really quite large, and then what if you had one thing you have segregated witness, what if you had segregated outputs? Oh, yeah, your scripts are still committed to, it's just they're committed to somewhere else. We're saving more of that really, really juicy, valuable base 1 megabyte Bitcoin space. This is all fine and soft forkable, but now the 64-byte transaction rule really starts looking kind of pernicious, because you're oh, I've got to write a covenant. And by the way, in the covenant program that I'm writing, I now need to write something that makes it so that I'm guaranteed that I don't generate a 64-byte transaction. I have to now add this logic to add one more byte or remove a byte to make sure that I'm padded out to not be 64. And every protocol designer is going to have to contend with that if we made one of these other upgrades. And then it gets kind of worse, because it's not just that you have to analyze one step. It's you have to analyze my program can't get into any state where at any point in the future I might need a 64-byte transaction. So I kind of look at that stuff and I go, I don't know for a fact that we're ever going to get there with covenants, but if we did, I think we would end up regretting not being able to express a 64-byte transaction when relevant. So that's my sort of hunch, that it's not right to get rid of it. and I haven't even got to the harebrained idea yet.
Okay, I was about to say, I barely followed how you described the issue, and I think I'm with you so far.
Yeah.
The harebrained night, yeah.
So now the harebrained part is the reason we're getting rid of 64-byte transactions is because we have an issue with the Merkle tree in Bitcoin. Now, the issues with the Merkle tree, it's not with the transactions. So, well, what if we got rid of the Merkle tree? What if we got a new Merkle tree? A better Merkle tree? A Merkle tree for the future of Bitcoin?
So you were whiteboarding new Merkle tree?
A new Merkle tree. And let me tell you the benefits. So the benefits of this new Merkle tree are no more does the Merkle tree have to have transactions in order, right? Transactions are actually in a fixed order. They're in a sparse Merkle tree. Sparse Merkle tree is a big fancy data structure that has a lot of really nice properties for light clients. Because you could say, does this block contain any spends for this output? And you can get an efficient answer back of if an output is spent in a block. If you had a sparse Merkle tree keyed by the outputs, it could be quite nice because you could say, hey, look, I'm interested in this output. Prove to me that this block doesn't spend it. And you can get a proof of that. That's actually pretty good. Or you can get a proof that it does have a spend. So that's like one thing we could get. If you did that, you would also have transactions committed multiply, which is fine because a TXID is unique. So a transaction by TXID can only be committed once. It's a commitment. It's not a, and I think that's something people think of the Merkle tree as like this serialized thing, but really it's just a commitment. And so the commitment could commit multiply to the same thing multiple times. This would actually commit multiple times, but you would still serialize when you process the block, which is good. And then if we did this as well, like the old Merkle tree, where does it go? It's still there. It's just that we make it so it only contains the Coinbase transaction. That's fine. And then what is going on in the Coinbase transaction? Well, at that point, the Coinbase transaction would just be creating like the new coins. And then it would have a commitment, much like the SegWit commitment, to the new Merkle tree. The benefit of this is right now in the way that mining works, you send over a Merkle path to the Coinbase transaction and the header. But if we made a fixed size Coinbase transaction with this new Merkle root, we would now have an expanded header. Now, the old header is still the old header, but the new header would be fixed size, and you could send that fixed size blob to your hashers, and they would be able to directly work on that buffer. Now, that means that there'd be a new hardware cycle able to work on fixed size headers, which would be more efficient. And also, it would be we would no longer have to, for a lot of like light client header chain syncing, you no longer have to include the Coinbase with a potentially dynamic size path. You just have a fixed size buffer that can contain both the header and the Coinbase transaction at the same time, which I think would be nice. So that's kind of like the thinking. And then in the new Merkle root, if you wanted to go pie in the sky, you could do a whole new transaction format. If you want to go simple, it'd just be like the same transaction format, just in a new place.
That's a doozy. Okay. So it's I actually kind of get, and I think it's pretty cool, this sparse Merkle tree idea. It would require do you imagine this would kind of go into a version of the great consensus cleanup instead of the 64-byte transaction line of the GCC, or is this maybe actually a better question would be like, do hardware manufacturers ever buy into this? Because this would require your behemoths of Bitmain and MicroBT to refactor.
Oh, they wouldn't have to.
Oh, really?
It's a soft fork. Their existing stuff would work fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just where the transactions live would change a little bit, but their existing hashing would work fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I say there's a new hardware cycle, it means that like there's probably some new optimizations they can do. Because right now they have to take the whole Merkle path and recompute the whole Merkle path. Okay. And then the Merkle path would basically always be empty. It would just be a single transaction living there. And so they wouldn't have to do as many of these, because right now they have to do, if you have, let's say, a couple thousand transactions, you got to do, 10, to 15 layers of hashing in order to get there. And so then you have to manipulate, people roll the fields in the Coinbase in order to get more block templates. So you just wouldn't have to do that anymore. It would just be the single one up there and the transactions would be fixed below.
Okay. that is a doozy of a harebrained idea, and I love it.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's a fun idea.
And I think that like the other thing too is like, you can say it's more complicated. It is, but in some way it's also less complicated because it's not taking away something. And taking away, I view as very complicated because I got to be really sure I'm not taking away something that somebody wants. But doing things in a slightly different way that's equivalent, that, you know, seems to me a little bit less aggressive. The only thing that's weird is what happens to the like old clients that don't have this upgrade. And it turns out they still will see blocks come in. They'll still see the transactions. They just won't really see them getting confirmed because they don't have the numerical root. So they won't know that transactions are getting confirmed. So there's sort of a weird thing of where like if someone were to like pay you, you actually would possibly see the transaction. You could verify the chain, but you wouldn't know that any of it was committed, which is a little bit bizarre. And if you had like lock times, of course, that would like mess with it as well. But I think even though it would require a fork to be able to see spends coming to you, which is like that's where the big complexity is. It's somehow a little bit simpler in terms of not taking away something, because you know you'd fix the 64-byte transaction issue.
That was a really, really long treatment on, I think, a really, really niche topic.
And if there weren't whiteboards at Op Next, you know what we would have?
Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah,
we have no ideas.
We have no ideas.
No good harebrained ideas. Let me tell you about one of the most slept on opportunities in crypto. Arch is building fast, composable DeFi apps on Bitcoin. Arch apps tap into the OG blockchain with by far the most liquidity and best brand in crypto. I've known the team for over a year. The tech they're building is solid, and they are racing towards mainnet. There's dexes like Saturn, meme coins on FunkyBit.fun, instant loans on Cha-Ching, and so much more. Plus, they're rewarding testnet users, so join me in trying out Arch while it's still early. I think I saw you tweet or say or had some blog or something where you were pontificating on like redesigning Bitcoin script entirely.
Sure.
This piqued my curiosity. I understood none of it, but I invite you to try to reprise this idea for me.
Okay.
In a way that maybe I could listen back later and try to digest, and maybe even so far as chat GPT my way through some of the esoteric language you might use. But I invite you to try to like explain.
Give it to you straight.
Yeah.
So I think the fundamental thing to think about is just like engineering hours. And how do you maximize your engineering hours? And one answer of how not to maximize them is to run Bitcoin on a bespoke, crappy programming language that no one else uses for any purpose, has found no use outside of Bitcoin, and spend all this effort trying to make, and I'll say, I love it. I love you guys. A terrible mini script thing that's like the subset of the script that kind of works, that has all this analysis, that has, you know, what I'll say is a better track record than writing bare scripts, but like still a track record where there's been issues and bugs. It's like, okay, maybe could we just go to something that's more well studied?
Yeah. Did we get a little too autistic on the whole script thing?
Maybe. And I think when you, and the reason why I bring it back to engineering efforts is if we were in a fork friendly intellectual environment, do you think that it would take more or less engineering hours to make a better script system for Bitcoin or to make mini script?
Oh, if we were amenable to more forks.
Yeah, if we were amenable, which one is used or consumed? I
don't know how much time has been spent on mini script though. All I know is that Rob threw himself at it for a long time, and that was after, I think,
there's a lot. Like people have been spending years.
So I'm gonna say, flip the script, redesign it.
And I think that the other side of it is that it's not like we have to reinvent it and like, you know, not invented here. We have to like do completely our own thing. It's like we could probably take like RISC-V or something that's like probably has like thousands of human years of developers working on it, studying it, analyzing it, building tooling for it. And I just don't think that we're going to like catch up to that. So maybe we take one of these things that's like relatively off the shelf. We figure out the tunables around like, okay, well, how do we have to cost out operations? What special purpose opcodes can we do inside of that architecture? Like, obviously, we don't want to like post SHA-256 to the chain. You'll just give an operation that computes the hash of a buffer. So you figure out the costing. WebAssembly has also had a lot of study in this way. We could just pick something. And then, obviously something maybe with a default program, and the default program can, parse out whatever, relevant bits that were a little bit more compressed than like a, move byte to this location. But then maybe just give every program like 10 megabytes of scratch space and then say, do whatever you want, go nuts. And I think that might actually work a little bit better than what we're doing with Bitcoin script. And if I, were to kind of say like, okay, well, like how would it actually look? It'd be like, okay, give me like a machine that you get 10 megabytes. It's an arbitrary number. The number for me more or less comes from like how much RAM could I give per core if I have like a 16 core machine and expect to not really feel like upset that I'm allocating that much. And then also give me, like maybe like twice as much so that I can lazily use one buffer while I put the other one in a background thread to get cleared out. So, okay, you give a 10 megabyte script context to execute. Maybe you can do that. You can look at what Ledger has, on their, Ledger Nano, how much memory. Maybe that's too much. They have like a fancy like Merkleizing thing that they're working on. So, there's a lot of different ways you could do it for different execution, environments. But you get this memory. The memory maybe has like preloaded into it the transaction that's currently executing. And then you get a segment, and then you have a special opcode, which is like, give me the length of that transaction, or maybe, that's the first thing is the length of the transaction. Maybe there's some special transaction parsing opcodes, but then that's it. And it's like, okay, figure out what you want to do. You want a script that does this or the other thing. Like, all right, you can do it. And, maybe there's like an op success type thing for, okay, we want to add a new, efficient like kind of Jets style thing. I know simplicity is kind of also in this ballpark of options of analyzability. So I'm not opposed to like that being the direction. I think that it's just sort of like when I think about, and this is where this idea comes from a little bit. So when I think about like the great script restoration, I think it's a good idea in some regards. And also like in 2018, I also like have a branch of Bitcoin where I like re-enabled all the old opcodes and fixed them and made memory limiters and all this stuff. But then I go and I go, oh, well, we're going to do all this engineering effort that's like already been done by other people. And it's not easier to change Bitcoin 1,000 times for every opcode, like, to just get an end result of like a crappy fourth interpreter. It's like, maybe we should just like load in something that's already been made. And that could be simplicity. Maybe that's the direction. It could be RISC-V. It could be EVM. It could be EVM. It could be anything. But I think that it's like something where it's like, okay, well, how can we get all the engineering effort that's like already been done and get something that we're going to then also get a bunch of good tooling, a bunch of, existing analysis and frameworks for how to, write good programs in. And I think we could probably do something better than restoring script.
Because if we're going to restore script anyway, we may as well just go back to the drawing board and say, could we do better?
It at least requires as much analysis.
Yeah.
So I don't see a particular reason to like love script over anything else.
Unless you have like Stockholm syndrome, like we do, where we're like, it's just the way it's been done. Okay, switching gears. Last night or the night before, you tweeted, quote, "I'm above the drama." But yet your Twitter handle is still colloquially, I think, shortened to MY, I believe, is it? Which is in direct reference to Kanye's YE, yay. To what extent are you
it's pronounced me, by the way.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool, because Jeremy. Okay,
yeah.
That makes it.
I'm not, do not call me Jeremiah.
I will, yeah, that's your rapper name.
Yeah.
So to what extent are you mirroring Kanye, and how much of this is fun, exasperative, and how much of it is you're just trying to figure out how to communicate during Jeremy season?
Yeah. So we are in Jeremy season.
Yeah.
And I think being above the drama, it doesn't mean that you're not like also a part of it in the same way that the rain clouds are above the rainstorm. Yeah, I think that's maybe my answer.
Bitcoin, everyone's been taking their stab at wild analogies this past month or so.
Yeah.
So that holds water, you could say, with the rest of them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, Twitter, the thing is, when I say above the drama, I've just been telling people, if you talk to me about op return, I have 10 more seconds in this conversation and I'm walking away.
Well, then, let me figure out what to, I'm just kidding.
Or, like if you talk to me about the, give you my, little spiel about the Sats thing, it's like, like whatever, like there's a million things I'd rather do. And I think life's too precious to spend it on that topic in particular. And there are other contributions to society I'd much rather make.
Again, this is a kind of a tired topic, but you're the CTV guy. You came out and you formally endorsed, but are not the primary advocate, bucket passer this time. You formally endorsed CTV and check from stack after a period of evaluation and submission, which you clearly defined. So you endorsed CTV, check from stack. I believe, was it AJ Towns who you referenced as saying this is the I forget
Stephen Roos.
Stephen Roos. Yeah, Stephen Roos. My bad. All the devs, I forget who's who sometimes. So Stephen Roos had formally proposed this, I guess. Have you received much more feedback on that? Do you feel that endorsement has yielded more endorsements from other people in the ecosystem? I know you're trying to not make yourself the CTV guy, but and I really like this attitude and positioning. But what are your thoughts on what your role is?
I did the whole I'm going to endorse something. Tell me what to endorse, because one, people are asking me to endorse something.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a gatekeeper. I didn't want, and I think I talked about this on the panel today of when you have a duty and other people expect you to do the duty and you're really not going to do it, you kind of have to tell them that you're not going to do it, or you have to do something. So people made the case, you're the CTV guy. People are expecting something from you. So I said, okay, this is what this is what I have to offer right now. And I think I did not have any pre-drawn conclusion there. I was happy to see, whatever got submitted, and I wanted there to be a stronger submission from cat people, but there just wasn't. And I was really actually sorely disappointed that there wasn't, because I want the drama. I want the debate.
You need the rain and the rain clouds. You're a rain cloud. Yeah. You have to produce rain.
Yeah. I wanted people to say this is a path that we could actually do, and here's how we're going to get there. And, I like the people who put, they seem like nice people, but their write-up was not, it didn't really have legs.
You're talking about Sterling and I like them both. Yeah, it was a really good effort, but as you were pretty clear that, and very helpful, I think, in saying, love the energy. You need, I'd advise getting other developers to, improve this.
It's got to have someone who could conceivably do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that it was lacking. And I understand why people who are more fans of Cat didn't want to necessarily subject themselves to my arbitrary process, and that they thought, but I think that it's important to have process. And if the reality is that there's no one who is a fan of Cat strongly enough that they'll just say how they plan to get it done, then I think it's just something people are going to talk about, and it's bullshit, full of shit. That's and so okay, if it's just a full of shit effort, then I'm not going to waste any time on it. And that's that's a Bitcoin's code is not written in ideology; it's written in C++ and Python functional integration tests. And so if I'm not seeing a release candidate coming out that people are going to be happy with, then there's not even a thing to endorse. And I do see with CTV and checksum stack that like, yeah, people will write the code. People will make the proof of concepts. People will do that work. And I think we have been seeing that continue to happen. We've not been seeing necessarily, perfect uptake in terms of like, there's been PRs open for maybe like 2 or 3 months now that I don't know if they're getting reviewed because people are mysteriously busy stirring pots of other kinds right now. Opening PRs or suggesting to open PRs for topics that are known to not make everyone happy to work with one another. And then boo-hoo, we're being so mistreated. So, I don't know. Like, I think there's like not a very strong will to like actually pay attention from certain elements of the community. But I think from other elements, like people are saying like, look, we've done the cycle. We've come up with our own proposals. We've vetted them. We've tried using CTV and checksum per second. The reality is like we're getting most of what we want. And like the things that were more pie in the sky we thought we were going to be able to do, like they turned out to be a little bit harder than we thought anyways. And, there are several instances of that. Like, one, for example, is in like BitVM, there's a desire to have TX hash. And I think I have the desire as well. I think it's cool. But it turns out like one of the core things you'd want it for, which is tying two UTXOs together, doesn't work even with that because you have a hash cycle no matter what. And so it's not really a problem with CTV. It's a conceptual problem of how can you make two different outputs atomic to one another. And it turns out like without like some really, really heavy machinery that like we're very far away from having, like you can't really do that anyways. So I think that's where people have kind of realized, okay, like maybe the things we were reaching for aren't quite so doable as we thought. But then also, if we really gave CTV a chance and tried as hard as possible to use it, we actually get most of what we wanted. So I think we're now in a place that's pretty healthy around that. But I think that there's just like still not quite a cohesive, like somebody is going to put the bow on it and put it in the driveway. I think that still has to happen.
Hey, Will here with Blockspace Media. Did you know that we have individual feeds for all our shows? If you're watching the Mining Pod, Bitcoin Season 2, or the Court Show, be sure to check out the individual feeds. You can find them on your podcast player of choice, whether that be Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. Just type in Blockspace Media and you'll find all our shows pop up, or just type in the individual show name like the Mining Pod or Bitcoin Season 2. Be sure to hit that subscribe and give us a 5-star rating so we can continue to bring you the best content in Bitcoin.
You had an interesting thought, I think, that I don't remember when you communicated. No. You always come up with interesting things. Much fodder for endless podcasts. But you had an interesting comment to me, which stuck with me about, I'm going to call it, it's almost like the circadian rhythm of like how to, like when to propose, implement, and activate a soft fork. Because a lot of people thought Bitcoin has a TikTok next block, doesn't care what the time is. But humans who work in Bitcoin, we care a lot about what the time is. We care about what the season is. We have real jobs and families. And you had a comment on that I thought was really interesting on there may be a smart tactical way to deliver a soft fork, say, to avoid activating during times when most people are busy with Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. Do you want to like kind of elaborate on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically the simplest example is you have a choice of either soft forks activating on Christmas or soft forks activating on May 30th. Which do you pick?
May 30th, because all the Europeans have to just not go on vacation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like that's like the basic of it is like, if you can wave a magic wand and pick on Christmas or not on Christmas, like you probably don't want to do like a sensitive infrastructure upgrade on Christmas. Seems like a little bit cruel. And you could say, well, like maybe people should change their religion if they're so worried. And it's like, okay, come on, you got like 1 billion Christians. Like, more.
There's gonna be a holiday, whatever day we choose.
Yeah. So there's gonna be a holiday around the world, whatever day. Why favor? Okay, well, like in reality, like we have infrastructure. Like we're not like just a pure software project. We're a hardware project, and like people who manage that like don't want to be on Christmas. So that's fine. And then you start going through okay, well, like what other things could we like practically care about? And then you go, okay, well, most people kind of live in on like Northern Hemisphere times. I don't know what the school year looks like in like Brazil, but I think that they're probably on the same school year. I think it's just like Australia, maybe that's really reversed or whatever. I don't know. But like September, people go to school. So September is maybe not so good. Because like a lot of people, like if you're a professor and you like spend time,
A lot of professors,
students, you
grad students.
Yeah, like everyone's pretty. September is usually like a pretty busy month for everyone. I just from what I can tell, and that seems pretty much global. Like people are going to school, and like that involves a lot of people who are smart, computer scientists, things like that. So maybe September is not so good. And then you go like New Year is also not so great. And like we got a lot of like Chinese like miners and stuff, and Chinese New Year like.
Dude, they just go dark. Yeah, you can't do business with China, and
so that might not be so good. Yeah. And then, well, like also like you got a lot of Americans who are pretty important, and most Americans really don't like tax day. And for like the couple weeks leading up to tax day, it's really hard to get someone to do something that's not like getting their taxes together. And like, yeah, maybe we don't like taxes, we don't do anything that respects them, but like if we're trying to coordinate a global system. And we're saying like a lot of the CEOs of the major mining companies based in America like are going to be unhappy. Maybe you want to avoid like mid-April or so then you start looking at these dates and then you go, well, like, there's Thanksgiving and I don't want to be like too American centric, but like these are real things that like tangible amounts of hash rate and, you've got like big companies like MicroStrategy that have lots of Bitcoin and maybe they like Thanksgiving too. And so you end up saying like, okay, well, when can you actually do a soft fork? And I've kind of realized that like the best time for an activation is early November. Like, okay, it's not the beginning of the school year and it's not the holiday season and no one is doing anything in November. Like November is like early November. Thanksgiving, like whatever, just the in-laws come over. It's cool. You don't need to like do like weeks of prep. November 10th is like a pretty juicy date.
Yeah, it's the day after often the day after the election.
You've got the Halloween candy.
You're high off. You're high off white paper day.
Every 4 years, it may not, or maybe every other year. Maybe November gets a little bit dicier. Maybe you don't want to do it right. On an election year or something because we know that the American geopolitical system is really quite important. So, but I think that's like a nice time. It's also a nice time like in like spring, like, sort of like March, April is kind of nice. Maybe not like tax day, but like mid-March, you could probably do something. May, you could probably do something. And then summer vacation is really hard for anything like European connected because they really like their summer vacation. So it's just one of those things.
Someone's going to have to give up something though.
Yeah, someone's got to give up something, but just if you don't want to like annoy anyone, it turns out you just kind of have these like this fall and spring thing that like you can get an activation set to either get signaled in the spring, activated in the fall, or signaled in the fall, activated in the spring. And you can probably
signal in the spring, finalize in the fall.
Yeah, finalize in the fall if you're doing kind of a speedy trial style thing. I think it just turns out to be like works pretty well. The speedy trial thing, I'm sort of one of the inventors of, so to speak. I was suggesting like, it's probably really bad the way that we did this whole SegWit thing where like it signaled and then like it locked in right away after. We should probably have like a date that people know this is when the feature is on or off. Not like, oh, by the way, we activated it, you get ready for 2 weeks from now. It's like much better for infrastructure to be like, this is the date where if it's on, you've got to be ready. So that was sort of the other thing is like you want that delay. And so like you get kind of just get like a spring and fall, and the opposite of like summer and winter seems like a little bit off. That's really all it comes down to is like you want people to have at least 3 months, and you want like neither of those dates to be like in a sensitive period. So I think you get spring and fall as like the ideals. Now that's not really good news for CTV and checksig from Stack because I don't think that we're going to get one this summer. Like, cause it's, if it was before the conference, I was like, yeah, it can happen. It's not the end of the world. It's just like, if you were trying to prepare a client, I like would not advise trying to like put all your energy out in August. I'm not going to be present in August. I'm going to do other stuff. And like, I'm going to be at the beach. I'm going to be like,
you live at the beach.
I live at the beach, but I will be at the beach. I'll be, doing whatever I feel like doing, but like, I'll be getting ready for school. I'm not hit me in November. So I think that that's sort of like it's just a hard reality. And I think people want to be on their, computers and stuff, but like, that's just like people in the real world have to run on a schedule and take advantage of it. So like, because we weren't ready for May, like if you aren't ready with a client and you're somebody who's like, oh, I'm a clients guy, I'm not a clients guy anymore. But if you're a clients guy or gal and you're like, oh, I want to be ready, and you're not ready with it by like October, like, come on. Like, what are you spending? You have to spend your whole summer doing it, but like everyone else needs to do other things.
Well, Bitcoin developers are masochists at some level. So, vacations, they love to give those up in the pursuit of higher ideals.
It's the difference between one and everyone.
Yeah.
One person, sure. Everyone, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. Because the mining company CEOs, they have to go buy big houses with diluted shareholder money.
Sure, whatever they do.
Yeah. So I did ask you this on the main stage earlier, where you want to see Bitcoin in the future, and you said you would like for the day someone discovers Bitcoin or starts using
it, becomes
Bitcoin,
a Bitcoin user.
Becomes a Bitcoin user to be the best day of their life.
Yeah. One of
the best days of life. What does that mean?
I think that like Bitcoin is freedom technology. That's like the inherent thing of of Bitcoin, and I think there are a lot of people who don't have freedom. And the day that you become a Bitcoin user, there should be a tangible improvement in your freedom. And I think that that's something that, like, as an example, like the day that I got Signal, now maybe I don't remember it now, but like maybe it took me a little bit of time to trust it to fully understand how the double ratchet protocol works. But I can now actually say whatever the fuck I want, whatever I think, and there's no big brother watching. I actually have a lot more freedom because Signal exists. I've gotten way more freedom from Signal in my life than I have from Bitcoin, that I'm aware of, at least. Maybe Bitcoin has warded off this hyperinflationary crisis in some way, shape, or form. But that's a big deal. And when us as old head Bitcoiners, we always used to say like, oh, like Bitcoin, be your own bank. It's like, well, be your own bank. That doesn't just mean like have a wallet, because I have a wallet and I also have a bank account, but it means like get services, build your own services, like have your own ability to do all this stuff. And so I think that that's where, when I think about Bitcoin as freedom technology, like it should dramatically improve people's lives. And I think one thing that like doesn't work is if you had Signal and then you downloaded it and then it said, yeah, you get to send one message a day. That would be kind of hard. I would maybe be like, all right, that's cool. I guess
feel
I'll
very, marginally more free than I used to.
Yeah. But if I could use Bitcoin all the time, I would probably feel more free. And I think that that's like where I root it back. And I recognize that there's like a technological limitation on that. But maybe we can scale sovereign access through some of these roll-ups. Some of them seem pretty promising. The Lightning Network is good. The eCash protocols people are working on, like, they have a trust model, but it seems like it's, pretty, the user onboarding is really compelling. And for the most part, people are paying people who they know. They just need to be like, hey, I need to give you some money. You can, claim it later, but I don't want to, I need a database for it. It's a great database. And I think that that's something where I just want to see more technology that people feel a tangible improvement in their freedom when they choose to run it. And I want to see Bitcoin go in that direction. And I believe Check Template Verify and Check Safe from Stack are really a part of that story. And if it weren't, I wouldn't be advocating for it.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Coming on Bitcoin Season 2.
Thanks for having me on.
It's Bitcoin Jeremy season, Bitcoin Season 2. So cheers. Thank you very much.